Well, howdy everybody, how you doing? I can't talk too well because I got a piece of grass in my mouth, but I wanted to invite you all over to my channel where we're gonna talk about Luffy Taro today. Okay, you know what the really funny thing is? Every time I have to wear a straw hat for a One Piece video, my mom is convinced I'm dressing as a farmer, because in all of the years I've talked about One Piece, my mom has never questioned what the series is about, so from her perspective, it might be about somebody trying to become king of the farmers, I don't know. But I'm serious though, I'm gonna make that Squash Garden 2019, it's gonna happen. Alright, let's talk about a good old-fashioned power discussion, alright? That's always something good. Specifically, how much stronger is Luffy gonna get at Wano, okay? Because I think out of all of the arcs so far in the New World, we've definitely arrived at the point where the Straw Hats are beginning to train to get a little stronger to fight against their main enemy. I mean, after the time skip, you know, they took care of the new Fishman pirates, no problem. They took care of Caesar and his band, no problem. Dressrosa gave them some issues, okay? That was like the first arc where the Straw Hats seriously had to exert themselves. You know, Luffy couldn't just walk up to Doflamingo and like Grizzly Magna him once and then end his existence, right? He had to go all out, you know, gear forth, and he really got banged up at the end of that fight. Totland, yeah, kind of the same deal, where he had to bust out, like, his ultimate technique, Snake Man, against, Katakuri there. And, I'm thinking we've pretty much seen all of the fruits of Luffy's training on Roose Skyno with Rayleigh after the Katakuri fight. Between Doflamingo and Katakuri's fights, I think we've really seen it. Like, that's the limit to what Luffy has achieved with his training with Rayleigh. Really good, finely tuned observation hockey, which is going to get even better now that he fought against Katakuri. Armament hockey that is included in his Gear 4th Bound Man, and also adding the observation to that for Snake Man. And the Conqueror's hockey, we saw him exude that against his fights with Don Chinchao and Doflamingo, and we saw him, like, you know, like being able to control it to knock out a certain number of people, right? But eventually, there was going to come a day, and that day has definitely arrived when he got, you know, smacked upside the head by Kaido's insta-kill mace. That, yeah, the training on Ruskina is not going to be able to just get him out of every situation now. Luffy and the other Straw Hats as well should probably train a little bit. Now, when it comes to the Straw Hats that have been staying on Wano for the last few weeks, you know, while Totland was going on, so Usopp, Frankie, Robin, and Zoro, they might have gone through some training that we just didn't get to see the full effects of yet, and in fact, I'm sure they were doing that. I'm sure Zoro wasn't just sitting around getting drunk every day that he was on Wano. I'm sure he was training to get a little bit stronger, right? Same thing with Frankie and everybody. I mean, yeah, they had all their jobs, like Frankie was a carpenter, Usopp is a toad oil salesman. Well, we already know the power-up Usopp got. It's that freaking toad that's on his head. That toad is seriously gonna do something. You better keep watching that thing, right? But, you know, they could have done some other training, you know, behind the scenes when they weren't working or whatever. So now it comes to Luffy, and Luffy is currently imprisoned in Udon in the prisoner mine, and it's very clear that he is not really, you know, Kaido put him in there to have his spirits crushed so he would eventually, I guess, end up working for the Beast Pirate crew, but the way that we've seen it so far, Luffy's spirits are not even close to being broke. He actually seems like he's kind of having fun, you know, aside from every now and then when the giant hippo dude bothers him or an alpaca man spits in his face. Other than that, it seems like Luffy's pretty much having a good old time, just, you know, treating it like a day at the gym, essentially, you know, just taking out the pickaxe and chiseling away at a wall, you know, or carrying these, you know, several tons of rocks and rubble over to the other side of the quarry and just, you know, racing Kid back and forth, although Kid's not there anymore now. He managed to escape, so Luffy's gonna have to find a new training partner to really bring him to the next level. You got it, Kid. You need to have some drive. You know what I mean? But yeah, so anybody could tell that Luffy is going through some serious, like, weight training, you know, just increasing the, you know, the size of his muscles and everything while he's in this prison. But I think you can also say that that's not really gonna be good enough. You know, Luffy to just, you know, be lifting for a few weeks and then he's able to take on Kaido. Now, we're not leading this up to the point where Luffy's gonna get a new power-up that's gonna enable him to go toe-to-toe with Kaido himself. Because if Oda were to do that, I would really think less of him as a writer, considering the build-up we've had to Kaido so far, how Oda went out of his way to show how indestructible this dude was, the fact that he's a dragon, a baby blue dragon at that. That's the most terrifying dragon! Actually, it's not. I'm not really a fan of the baby blue, but who knows? Who knows how it'll actually look in the anime, but it might take me a while to warm up to it. I don't know. I'm just not a fan right now. Picture Shenron or Paronga if they were baby blue. not really as imposing, you know what I mean? And also Oda going into like, if it's one-on-one, Kaido wins. You know, that's pretty impressive. So, yeah, the arc is definitely not going to end with, I mean, if there's gonna be a group fight against Kaido, I'm okay with Luffy getting the final hit. Like, it's a collaborative effort. Like, you have, like, dozens of people just freaking hammering Kaido and just trying to get his HP down to 1, and then Luffy's the one that deals that final, hit point, and he just and he drops. Like, I'm okay with that. But how exactly is Luffy going to get stronger to the point where he can just avoid the insta-kill mace, or he can at least manage to, like, stay conscious after getting smacked by that thing, alright? So the kind of training Luffy's going through right now in the prison might not seem all that impressive, considering we've seen Zoro, like, do the weightlifting thing on the Sunny, and that's all Luffy is really doing, just really basic, you know, like, increasing his strength, his stamina, his speed, you know, lugging giant rocks, running around, that kind of stuff. I mean, it's impressive because he's doing it with giant rocks and boulders and all that stuff, but is it really something that's going to get him to the next level of strength? Well, there's two things I want you to consider with this, okay? The first thing is, the kind of training Luffy did on Skyna and the kind of training he's doing right now in the prison are completely different, okay? Because when he was on Skyna with Rayleigh, he was learning how to use Haki. Rayleigh first had to explain the basics of Haki to him, and then it took him a year and a half to really grasp it, and then in the last 6 months, that's when Rayleigh left, and Luffy was left alone on the island just to kind of fine-tune his Haki. He knew Gear 4th at that point, and just to brawl with the giant animals that were on the island, like the giant lion, the giant tiger, the giant alligator, King Kong, you know, like literally the giant gorilla King Kong, you know, he fought against him. You know, Luffy decked out Kong. But, yeah, the kind of training with observation, that did not involve, like, weightlifting or anything. That involved, you know, blindfolding Luffy and learning how to respond to the environment and to sense, you know, others' intent and the objects hurtling towards you and how many there were and how to dodge them with split-second timing. That was the kind of training observation was. Armament training, we didn't really get to see it all that much as opposed to observation, but I would assume it would be first learning how to coat your arm in the color of arms, which is like an invisible suit of armor, like Rayleigh explained, and then after that, I would imagine just like a stress test, you know, like see how many rocks you could break using armament or something like that. So, you know, more focused on that, not really focused on actually increasing your muscles, right? And Conquerors is something completely different. I'm not really sure how Rayleigh taught Luffy how to use Conquerors. That really hasn't been shown at all yet, right? So, yeah, Luffy did brawl with the giant animals, which, you know, he had a boost in stamina and strength and everything like that. I'm just saying the most of the training Luffy was doing on Skyna was not the kind of training he's doing right now. It was focused entirely on something separate, okay? And Luffy's base stats did go up while on Skyna during the 2-year time skip. Of course they did. But it's just that he's focused entirely on doing this right now. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. The second thing to keep in mind is that Luffy is wearing Sea Prism Stone handcuffs right now. Now, they've been stated to be a weaker form of the Sea Stone. It's not the same kind that, like, you know, Robin had at Enies Lobby, or the kind they used in Impel Down, which is like a stronger version. They keep them deliberately weakened in the prison, so the prisoners that have Devil Fruit powers, they can still at least move around. But even with that being the case, it was stated that Kid and Luffy in particular can move around extraordinarily well, even with the fact that they have weakened Sea Stone. Like, they're not used to these kind of effects. Like, I would imagine a normal Devil Fruit user in the prison has the handcuffs on them, they would just be like, you know, they would be walking around like sluggish all day, like tired, you know, they would still be able to swing a pickaxe and work, but it would just be like, oh god, I just can't get through today fast enough, you know what I mean? Luffy and Kid are like, let's go Kid, come on, another one, how many tons did you lift? 15 tons? I can lift 20 tons, I can lift 50 tons, Luffy, 50 tons, I'm gonna lift infinity tons, you're on, you know, and they're just running back and forth with these giant blocks, and the prison guards are freaking out like, did somebody forget to put Sea Prism Stone on them? It's like, no sir, we did. I'm like, oh man, what the hell did Kaido bring in this morning, you know? So, I like to think, yes, Luffy does not have access to his Gumu Gumu no Mi right now, but I think that's even going to be a bigger boost when he does get out of the prison, because he's been in prison for several days by now, right? He's been in there. I'm not really sure how many days, but it's been a couple days, right? He's been in the prison just working his ass off, you know, getting buff and all that crap. I can imagine, like, Luffy's already stronger, but if you take off the handcuffs, Luffy will feel like even more energy coming into him, because like even with the handcuffs draining some of his energy, he still has this much. You know, it would be like the scene in Yu Yu Hakusho when Yusuke fights against Toguro in the final round of the Dark Tournament, and Yusuke's pretty strong already, but then he takes off the aura cuffs and it's just boom, like it explodes. Or Kenpachi's eye patch in Bleach or something like that, you know, where he takes off the handcuffs, maybe Raizo finds the key and frees him, and Luffy's just like his muscles begin to bulge, like boom, like whoa, I'm even stronger than I thought I was. And he wasn't able to use his Gamu Gamu no Mi the entire time while he's in the prison. Well, Luffy now, you know, his regular Gamu Gamu, maybe that'll be like one of the feats that Oda shows us, how much stronger he got in the prison. Like his regular Gamu Gamu no pistol is able to do as much damage as he got pistol or something, you know, or he was able to do as much damage with armament hockey without armament hockey now. Like he destroys like not a mountain, but like a really large rock or something with his pistol. Is like just standard pistol. And Raizo is like, whoa, did you use armament hockey? And Luffy's like, no, I didn't. That's awesome! You know, let's try it with hockey. And Raizo's like, no, let's not. Let's just get out of here, you know? So I like to think of it like that. Yeah, the strength training he's doing is pretty basic. It seems like the kind of stuff that Zoro does on the daily basis on the Sunny, lifting those giant weights or having the giant boulders on his arms, which, that looks painful. But, yeah, compared to the training he done in Ruskaina, which is hockey-based, this is just more getting his body stronger and stronger. Now, there might be other ways he can train. I threw out the possibility, and it's looking like it's probably not going to be the case right now, although I do think of a way it could be. When we found out the existence of the Toki Toki no Mi, that, you know, Lady Toki had, you know, she has the ability to jump into time and, you know, forward time and all that stuff for other people, I considered the possibility that there's other aspects of that fruit that we just don't know about. She's stated she can't go back in time. Nobody can travel back to the past, okay? Not even Samurai Jacks. You can travel to the future, but you can't travel back to the past, so whatever. But that doesn't exclude other things that you could do with the Time fruit. And because the Time fruit is such an important fruit, just the ability alone, I don't think it's just going to be gone forever, right? So even if Lady Toki died, I think she had to pass on the fruit to somebody else. And that person, I think, is her daughter, Hiyori. I mean, what other reason would you have for sending Momo and everybody else into the future and leaving Hiyori with you? Because Lady Toki was resigned to die at that moment when Kaido and Orochi were taking over the castle. You know, she's like, you know, I've been, you know, out of time for so long now. I've been constantly jumping into the future, but I finally found my love, who is Odin. I'm gonna die right here and now, so I need you guys to go to the future. That's fine. That's well and good if she's ready to end it. But what about Hiyori? You know, her daughter. So I think Toki was smart to realize, like, I cannot just die here and let Kaido get their hands on the freaking time fruit, right? So I'm gonna have to, you know, end it and then give the power to you, Hiyori, and you're gonna have to use this power, and you're gonna have to learn how to use it. Maybe she told her kids a little bit about the time fruit on how to use it and everything, but they didn't really understand because they were pretty young. But I think that's the best way to look at it. And that other aspect of the fruit, we saw her being able to send people into the future, and she stated she couldn't do anything involving the past, but what about freezing time? What about either freezing time or creating like a hyperbolic time chamber kind of dealie, where you can create an isolated space where time is dilated and moves at a different rate, like 1 hour inside of this selected space is only 1 second or 1 minute outside, or the exact opposite. Maybe you can make a space where time flows much faster or much slower than reality, you know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. So, you know, I'm just throwing this out there as a possibility. If Hiyori really does have that ability of the time fruit, and Komurasaki is Hiyori, and considering we just saw everything that happened with her at the banquet, maybe, like, Kiyoshiro was in on it, and that might give some credence to believe how she survived. Maybe Kiyoshiro sliced her, but then she used her powers of the time fruit to, like, freeze the wound, so she still got cut, but she's not actually injured, or maybe the you know, she's not going to die from it, and she can make maybe do something to the wound or like freeze it in time so it never gets worse, you know, because you can't turn back the clock, but maybe she could just like put it in stasis where it's like, oh yeah, if I continue time on this wound, I'll definitely die immediately, but unless I do that, I don't have to worry about it, right? So it might be something like that. There's probably other facets of that fruit we don't know about. So Luffy has bolstered strength training so far, gets out of the prison, and then if the Komurasaki turns out to be an ally, which I guess that would mean Kyoshiro might also turn out to be an ally, or maybe not necessarily an ally, like they're going to be buddies with the rebellion, but at least they don't like the shogun and they want to get him out of power, maybe that kind of thing, like the enemy of the enemy is my friend, basically, kind of deal. You might have a situation where not just Luffy, but maybe some of the other Straw Hats go in to this stasis room or whatever you want to call it, or the hyperbolic time chamber, if you just want to call it that, and they train even more. The only reason I'm saying this is because I would really like Luffy to learn Gear 5th in this arc. I don't think he has Gear 5th right now. I think his training on Ruskaina was focused entirely on developing and perfecting Gear 4th and the different forms therein. So Bound Man, Tank Man, Snake Man. There might very well be another form we haven't seen yet. Lion Man seems to be the common thing because King of the Pirates, the King, and also Conqueror's Hawk, you know, if Tank Man is armament and Snake Man is observation and Bound Man is like an jack of all trades, well-rounded version. Get it? Well-rounded because he's a ball. Yo! Sorry, wrong joke. That wasn't a skull joke. That was a bouncy joke. Maybe there's a Lion Man that is focused on Conquerors. So, okay, sure, fine. But I don't think he has a Gear 5th yet. But I would really love for him to learn a Gear 5th in this arc and use that against Kaido. Maybe he could use it to take out one of Kaido's, like, high-ranking men, you know, like one of the members of the Beast Pirates, like Jack or something. Luffy, you know, floors Jack with this new technique and then goes on to fight against Kaido. And Luffy is, of course, teamed up with a bunch of other people at that point, and they all, you know, fight against Kaido together. I just started thinking about, like, the particulars of that, like, Oda drawing all of these characters, having them fight against only one opponent. Now, we've already done that with Oars, kind of, but remember, the fight with Oars was very different. Oars was very much just like a dumb, you know, just a lumbering ogre. He was a zombie, didn't really have a lot of intelligence. When he teamed up with Moria, he had a little bit, but Moria also wasn't the smartest tool shed in the axe. You know what I mean? So, if that's the situation, it's going to be completely different with Kaido, because Kaido, he's not, you know, a Rhodes Scholar either, but he's survived all these battles and everything. It's going to be a completely different scenario than with Oars, right? So I'm just imagining the fight that Oda's going to draw, if he's really going to do it with, like, a bunch of characters like the Straw Hats and the Supernovas and Luffy all fighting against Kaido at the same time. It's going to be a lot of shit going on in the pages. It's stuff like that. You know, attacks whizzing by and everything. Zoro slicing, Hawkins using crap, Kid using magnetism, Law using rooms and such, Luffy Gear 4th, Gear 5th, whatever he's gonna have. So, now, I also threw out the idea that as soon as we found out about what an awakening of a fruit was, that maybe his next gear, Gear 5th, would be his awakening. Because I don't think it's going to be a separate ability. Some people have thrown out that idea, like his awakening is going to be separate from his gears. I don't see that, because what we've seen with Doflamingo and Katakuri, when they utilize their awakening, it's like a separate ability they have to willingly activate. Like, Katakuri fights with his normal Mochi Mochi abilities until he willingly activates his awakened. You know, he's like, okay, I'm now activating my awakened mode, and I'm, like, you know, gonna turn the ground into Mochi. Or Doflamingo, there has to be a reason why they don't just use it at default, okay? There has to be a reason why Doflamingo didn't start the fight by turning everything into string. Now, I know you could always say, oh, well, you know, that's just, Doflamingo felt like he was so arrogant and he was better than Luffy and Law, so there was no reason to. He didn't feel like he had to activate his awakening until, the fight got to the point where he was actually pissed the hell off, you know, right? But I still think there's a reason, like, there's a limit where you can't just fight in your awakened form with your full power at the very beginning, because it might drain you a lot quicker. It might be a lot exhausting to use your awakened powers. But yeah, and, you know, as for the name scheme, he could always go, like, you know, Gear 6, Awakened Monkey, or Awakened Rubber, or something like that. I don't know. But I like to think that, yeah, he's going to combine the awakening with his gear. And from what we've seen with Katakuri now and the way that an awakening tends to operate, it's going to be turning the surrounding area into rubber. Okay, now this is going to benefit Luffy, but it can also like hinder the opponent, right? Because if the entire world is made of rubber, and it's probably going to be like extremely elastic and super bouncy. It's not just going to be like, you know, you're stepping on like a rubber floor, because there's like, I've been in stores that have like rubber floors, and I'm not like bouncing all over the place in the store, right? No, this rubber world that Luffy would create in his awakening, it would be like a bounce house times 10, you know, where like an opponent simply would not be able to get their bearings. They wouldn't be able to settle down. They would, as soon as they hit any surface, and if it's an awakening, it would turn the entire area. So if there's like a field, then it would turn the entire field super bouncy. If it was trees, the trees would turn bouncy. If there were buildings or rocks, they would turn super bouncy. And, you know, not only would they not be able to stand up, but Luffy could like punch them and they would fall into like a rock or something and they would bounce right back. So it would literally just be like, boom! Boom! And it just keeps going back and forth, and Luffy is just pummeling them like a freaking speed bag. You know, that would be freaking cool, right? As an awakening, I think that would fit Luffy very well. And of course, this would also give Luffy higher mobility, because we've seen that level of elasticity while he's in Gear 4. Like, Luffy cannot stand still while he's in Bound Man, because he's constantly bouncing like a ball, right? Well, if he activated this rubber world, then he would be able to have that elasticity in any form that he had, whether he was in Gear 4 or not. So Luffy's jumping powers like zip, 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 like all over the place. If he could like calculate this exactly, like I'm gonna bounce here and then land here, and it would be super freaking fast because he's already freaking fast. So yeah, he would be like quite literally like a flying bullet, just flying around the battlefield and just slamming into the opponent that can't even stand up straight. So I think there's a lot of fun you could have with that, like artistically, like Oda depicting the entire world in the air, like not the entire world turning rubber literally, but like a rubber world, like the immediate vicinity around Luffy going rubber, and then him bouncing around like crazy and just constantly slamming into the opponent who's constantly getting slammed back at him, you know. So yeah, that would be pretty sweet, right? But would that be Gear 5th though? Or would that be the next level after that? Are we not going to get to the awakening in this arc? Or is this something like, oh yeah, we're going to get a new gear, we're going to get Gear 5th, but it's not going to be an awakening, because maybe Oda wants to hold off on Luffy awakening his power until much, much later. But then again, fighting against Kaido, who has arguably the highest, like, physical attack stats in the entire series, if there was ever going to be a time to learn awakening, I think this would count as a good contender. I don't think, like, oh, Kaido, I'm not going to bust out Luffy's awakening for Kaido. He's not even worth it. I think he's kind of worth it, right? But let's say that's not the case. Let's say it's something else, right? Luffy has to learn Gear 5th first, and then maybe Gear 6th will be his awakening. Okay, fine. This is an oldie but a goodie. I'm just gonna throw out the idea. Luffy turning his rubber, you know, getting it malleable enough so he can actually form it into shapes. I've said this before. It feels like it's been a while, but before we really knew what an awakening was, I thought that might be the awakening, right? Because we've already seen Luffy increase the tensile strength and the elasticity of his rubber. Well, let's make it more malleable now, like liquid rubber kind of thing, you know, where, you know, he could literally just take his hand and then like just change it around, and then boom, he has a hammer, boom, he has an axe. You know, that would fit Luffy's naming schemes for his techniques rather well. You know, when he's using Gumu Gumu no hammer, he can literally turn his hand into a hammer. When he uses Gumu Gumu no spear, he can maybe turn his actual legs into spears to attack the opponent, right? So, yeah, if you're just going through all these different qualities of rubber, you know, the bounciness of it, the tensile strength of it, yeah, malleability is another big advantage of rubber. You know, you heat it up and you get it into the liquid state of rubber, and then you can make a whole bunch of certain things with it. So I think that would either be the next stage to take it if you weren't going to go with if you weren't going to go with the awakening form. Now, as for Haki, like I said, we focused on Haki a lot with the Ruskaina training and all throughout the, you know, the part 2 of One Piece up until now, really. We've just been showing off how badass Luffy's Haki is. You know, observation is insane. He fought against Katakuri. That was like an observation fight, learning how to see into the future. We saw Gear 4 with Armament and Colverian and Snake Man and everything. We saw how badass his Conquerors is, and knocking out 50,000 fishmen in a plaza, or clashing with Dofi. So we've seen a lot of action from Luffy using haki. So I think it might be maybe time to get back to the roots, you know, getting more of like just Luffy getting more buffer, you know, stronger physically, and maybe utilizing another ability of his Gumu Gumu no Mi, because I understand that got tired after a while. You know, we had 600 something chapters of One Piece where Luffy was pretty much just focused on getting physically stronger and mastering more of his Devil Fruit, Gear 2nd, Gear 3rd, and so then all of a sudden Oda introduces like, okay, Luffy's gonna learn haki now, so we gotta focus on that for a few hundred chapters. But it's getting to the point where, yeah, Luffy's obviously not a match for Kaido, and might not even be a match for King or Queen right now at the state he's in. But yeah, I think the situation of him training in the prison, it's gonna yield a higher result than you think. I think it's gonna definitely not just be like, oh yeah, I'm a little bit stronger now, I trained in that mine for 6 days, you know, I'm a little bit buff, but who cares? No, I think it's gonna be a big thing where he's gonna take off those cuffs, and it's like, well, they weren't repressing him that much, but they were repressing him enough to like, he's gonna have a big power boost after that. And then maybe, because there's not really that much time left until the Fire Festival, there's only a few days, so that's the reason I threw in that like hyperbolic time chamber stasis pod thing. So it's like, okay, Luffy, you can now have an additional few weeks to train with somebody. Maybe they could get a really strong samurai, or maybe even Hyogoru of the Flowers. We just got introduced to him, that Yakuza boss. Maybe he might have some special skills to teach Luffy, or more importantly, I don't even know how I forgot to leave this in the video, but maybe Luffy, it's finally time for him to learn how to use the Nidai Kitetsu. You thought that was a joke at first, where he's just taking out the Nidai and going to punch his opponents like always. No, 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 no. I think it's about time we do a little bit of like Final Fantasy kind of training, with the Straw Hats beginning to cross into others' territory. You know, like Luffy learns a little bit of Zoro's sword skills. Zoro learns a little bit of Sanji's leg fighting style. Nami learns how to fire rockets out of her boobs, just like Frankie. You know, Brook learns a little bit more about Rumble Balls from Chopper. I think it's time we begin to cross over the different sections of the Straw Hats. I think that's definitely the smart way to take it. No, obviously I don't think that, but yeah, the Nidai Kitetsu needs to be addressed at some point, right? Even if Zoro isn't going to just, you know, use it or something, not necessarily Luffy, because Luffy's not the best swordsman around. But yeah, I think one of those things is definitely possible that I've discussed in this video, him getting stronger most certainly, but, you know, learning a new gear, I think that might be on the horizon well. I think that would definitely be the time for it to fight against Kaido. So let me know what you guys think below. Let me know your thoughts on Luffy's awakening. What would it be like? If his gear would be the awakening, if it's going to be Gear 5th or Gear 6th in that respect, and what his training in Udon prison is really going to do for him later on in the arc, if it's going to help him at all. So let me know about that stuff below. I'm going to go now start to plant my squash garden in the middle of the winter with 3 inches of ice on my yard. I'll figure something out.